Mirrors after midnight, alibis by noon. My name is Jasper, and the first thing you need to know is that hotels have memories. They pretend to be about arrivals and departures, but the doors remember where hands hesitated, the carpet remembers the weight of a decision, and the mirrors, those are archivists with a sense of humor. I'm the night manager at the Galleon, a spill of old glamour and newer guilt 5 blocks off the waterfront. On paper, I manage staff, incidents, occupancy. In practice, I shepherd stories, some of them drunk, some of them dressed like investors, some of them naked under bathrobes that swear they're monogrammed. I live with Adam. He is a paramedic and a show-off about kindness. He smells like road salt in winter and cut grass in summer and antiseptic year-round. When he gets home after a 12-hour shift, his shoulders admit more than his mouth will, and I put my hands there until they remember what bodies did before careers. We have a rule written on a sheet of printer paper taped to our fridge at a stubborn slant. Say the thing by noon. We adopted it after a long season of late confessions that arrived wearing perfect timing. Noon is a clumsy hour, which makes it better for truth. The Tuesday when the lobby orchids behaved and I didn't, the Galleon was a machine humming to itself. The concierge had traded his tie for a pocket square and an attitude. The Bell staff were selling sincerity by the pound. And at 11:57, I told a guest her suite was ready, though the bathroom was still full of steam and apology. The guest's name was Lucien Carr. I learned later that it was not. He was one of those men who never have to work out how to hold a room. It turns toward them like a compass even when it's wrong. His mouth had the kind of complication I prefer to deal with after midnight. He had a book with a blank dust jacket and hands that read the world like Braille. He looked up from his phone and said, "You're the one who makes all of this look on purpose." "It's in the job description," I said, "between fire alarms and honeymooners." He smiled at me like a test you know you will fail and still show up to take. "If I needed to disappear, hypothetically, what would you recommend?" "We're full on hypotheticals tonight," I said, because we were, and because the hotel is always running a special on vanishing acts that manage to sign the bill. He laughed and followed the bellman to the elevator, leaving a headache in the shape of a compliment. Adam had a day shift and was supposed to come by the hotel at lunch. He liked eating in the staff cafeteria. He said it reminded him that most meals are work from someone's hands. At 12:14, my phone buzzed with a text that read, "Short notice call, rollover on the causeway. I'll see you tonight." I wrote back, "Be careful," which is the domestic equivalent of throwing a glass of water at a wildfire. At 1:05, I got the email we send automatically to a certain kind of guest. "Your digital key has been activated." I glanced at the screen because I could not stop myself from solving puzzles with other people's clues. The suite Lucien had taken was on 21, a corner room with a view that regretted nothing. 15 seconds later, the system told me the door had also been opened by a metal key, housekeeping's backup, recorded and time-stamped. I called the floor. "You just serviced 2116. "Negative," the floor housekeeper said. "We'll get there in an hour." "Someone's already there," I said, and tried to say it like it wasn't interesting. Hotels solve themselves with either grace or panic. I took the express to 21, walked the carpet that has more experience than all the matrons in this city combined, and stood outside 2116 trying to look like management and not like a human. A soft noise behind the door made a small, disobedient truth in my chest. I knocked. The door opened on a woman wearing a towel and no regret. She had the posture of someone whose life had already forgiven her. "Yes," she said, and touched the door with fingers that wore a ring trying not to be recognized. I wanted to make sure housekeeping hadn't disturbed you, I said. We disturbed ourselves, said Lucian from somewhere behind her, as if it were a joke and a prayer. The towel woman smiled, closed the door, and I added 2 new numbers to my mental map, her hand on his shoulder, his mouth on her neck. I decided to be a professional about it and succeeded for 3.5 hours, which is longer than people think professionalism lasts. At 5:30, Adam texted, "Rough call. Long story. See you at home after 8." He added a heart he knows I don't trust. I put my phone face down on the gray manager's desk, which knows things about shifts and also about marriages, and I told myself that what I wanted didn't matter because I was employed. At 7:12, I took the elevator to the roof where the air does not pretend to be good for you, and I lit a cigarette, which I do not smoke, which is both the point and the problem. The river looked like a long sentence that forgot the period, and the city blinked at me like a tired genius. Lucian found me because men like that always do. "There you are," he said, as if he'd lost something and I had the grace to be it. He stood too close to the breeze. Up close, he had a scar along his jaw that made a crooked truth out of a perfect line. "You look like someone who trusts edges." "I look like someone who needs to get back to the desk," I said, and the lie didn't break any bones, which is always encouraging. "Stay," he said. "Have a drink in my room after shift. I'm facing the river. The river says it's rude to refuse." "I'm dating a paramedic," I said. "I'm heartbroken," he said. "That's not a category," I said. "It is if you've practiced," he said, and put his hand on the railing and left. At 10, Adam sent another text, just a dot. That dot held together all the things I know about that time of night. Crash victims who ask the right questions too late, drunk teenagers who believe in immortality for 2 more years, a man collapsing in a supermarket aisle because his heart decided not to negotiate. I put my phone back into the drawer where we keep spare pens and the kind of patience we resupply on Fridays. I walked 3 tours of the lobby, a circuit that forgives most sins except the ones you bring home with you. Then I rode the elevator to 2116 and knocked on the door of the kind of mistake you write essays about. He opened it with a glass in each hand and a warning in his mouth. "I am trouble," he said. "I am management," I said. He stepped back and let me in, and the room smelled like expensive wood trying to hide the truth about humidity. The towel woman was gone, and the couch looked like a man had been almost careful. He handed me a glass, and I did not ask what it was. He talked about his book, which was not about me, which was merciful. He asked about the 24-hour rhythm of a building that never sleeps, and I told him where the quiet sits and how to approach it. The city threw its feet against the base of the hotel like a lover, arguing for more time. He put his hand on my hip at the exact height of a regret. He said, "You are beautifully unwise," like it was applause. I put my palm against the back of his neck and felt the small, insane kindness of skin giving you permission. We moved like men who have been waiting politely all their lives to become impolite. He put his mouth on my throat and said my name like a weather report for a city on fire. I undid his shirt, and he did that inhale people do when they remember they have lungs. When it was done, we laughed in the particular way men laugh when they've paid in good currency and are waiting for change. "Does your boyfriend know you're here?" he said. "We don't have a boyfriend," I said, and hated my pronouns and fixed them. "I don't know if my boyfriend would want me to be here." "What would he want you to want?" he said. "Me," I said, which is what always ruins everything. I stayed too long. When I finally walked out into the hallway, the mirror over the console outside the suite put my hair back in place for me like a mother who's forgiven this before. I pushed the elevator button with the lesson you keep in your fingertip, and wrote it down to the lobby where night continues whether or not you have behaved. Adam was asleep when I got home. He always sleeps on his left side, so his heart is closer to the window. I told him that fact about himself, and he said I was a man who collects inaccurate things for the joy of nomming them. I crawled into the bed, the way men crawl into the arguments they plan to lose politely, and put my face into the place between his shoulder blades where his day still lives. In the morning he made coffee, because coffee is the apology tastes like, and he said, "We should go away at the end of the month." And I said, "Yes." And the part of me that writes checks for men with beautiful mouths added a line item for later. You think you know the shape of a triangle until someone adds a point. 2 nights after I began practicing ethics with Lucian, my front desk agent buzzed me on the manager line with a voice that meant "Dear God," and I walked out to find Adam standing in the lobby wearing his uniform and an expression that made the orchids reconsider their job. He was not alone. There was a man beside him with a beard that on any other night I might have cataloged for its architecture. The man smiled in a familiar way. "Hi," Adam said, and the syllable was the kind of promise you specialize in breaking only once. "We're here," the bearded man said, "for the paramedic discount." He laughed because he assumed we were cute and the world was on his side. "Sure," I said, and peered into the computer because that is what I know how to do when I have no idea how to be human. "Name." "Sam," he said. "The rest can be implied." Adam said nothing. Then he said Jasper, which is not my name, and then he smiled at me in that way he does when he thinks I need ice. "Kidding," he said. "This is Grant, also not my name." "We talk later," his eyes said. We did not talk later. We performed the day. He checked in Sam to a room that could have been any room. I comped the parking and wished them the kind of night that would be regretted in the morning. Adam left half an hour afterward, kissed me in the cleaner's closet where the vacuums live like sleeping animals, and said, "I love you," because he is an emergency that believes in making things clear. Lucian texted, "You're not the only man who knows where the service stairs are." I texted back, "I am old enough to charge for a tour." He wrote, "Tonight." I put my phone away and went to the staff cafeteria and ate the kind of sandwich that tastes like a building. At noon the next day I stood in the kitchen and looked at the notepad. The letters wobbled around the word daylight like they had better places to be. Adam came in and leaned against the counter and said, "I cheated," with the voice he uses when he explains triage. I said, "I know," with the voice I use when I file things under inevitable. We told the truth until it started to sound like a therapy session, and then we told the truth badly, which is how I know we were honest. He asked how many times I had done the thing our rule is supposed to prevent. I said twice with Lucian, and an uncountable number of times in my head with men who didn't know my name. He said once with Sam, and once in consideration with men he didn't meet. He asked if I wanted to stop. I said I wanted to start something that didn't require footnotes. He said he wanted to love me like he wasn't practicing for a better job. We invented a ritual because people like us need rituals to make ordinary acts look sacramental. We bought oranges because forgiveness should have pulp, and we cut them in quarters and ate them in silence, and then we said what we would do next. I said I would end it with Lucian because men like him do not respond to half measures. They eat them for breakfast. He said he would end it with Sam because he had already begun to write him into a sentence that didn't have room for 2 nouns. I told Lucian in the lobby under the chandelier that believes it is better than all the rooms it has ever known. He smiled like I had done something charming and said, "You don't have to be noble to be beautiful," which is the kind of sentence that sells well in cities like ours. I said, "I'm choosing something that requires daylight," and my voice didn't crack, which felt like theft. He touched the lapel of my jacket as if it needed straightening, and he left the way men like him leave. Elegantly, like gravity owed them a favor. Adam told Sam in the convenience of a parking lot because some mercy insists on flight paths. He came home and put his hands on my shoulders and said, "We're going to be people we haven't met yet." And I said, "Then let's be at the introduction." This morning I stood under the bridge where the river pretends it isn't tired and the trains practice leaving. The city clattered over my head like a big excuse. I lit a cigarette, I don't smoke, and watched the smoke lose its argument with wind. The hotel behind me began its day with a yawning of doors and an apology for last night's prices. At noon I went home and we kissed like we were choosing the thing that chose us. It wasn't pretty. It was focused. He pushed me gently against the door and said my name like it was proof. I undid his shirt like it was a lock and he showed me where midnight lives, and we kept the lights on because that is what noon demands when it asks for a verdict. After, we lay on the floor because sometimes beds are for people who don't need to feel forgiven. He put his palm over my heart like a claim check. I put my mouth against his wrist, where the pulse keeps appointments. If you're listening for the intrigue in all this, if you need the hotel room and the camera and the angle and the excuse, please understand. The angle is always the same. It is the way two men can turn toward or away from each other in a world that would prefer it be easier to leave. I am not noble. I am not beautiful. I am a man in a city that collects these stories and hates being told they are the same. Tonight I will stand under the chandelier and watch a room make decisions. Maybe Lucien will be in one of them. Maybe Sam will order a drink he wants to be a promise. Maybe my orchids will behave. But right now, at the small table in our kitchen with the paper taped to its surface, daylight has teeth and we are learning how not to flinch. The switches of the city, if you'll believe me, keep trying to line themselves without complaint. For a few hours at a time, they succeed.